Martin. I am the Communications Manager for Harpeth Conservancy. Hi everyone, my name is Jess Martin. I am the Communications Manager for Harpeth Conservancy, and this is...
My name is Ryan Jackwood. I'm the Science Director for the Harpeth Conservancy.
And welcome to Tennessee Water Watch Live. This is our very first live stream, and we're so excited that you all could join us today, whether you're joining us live or you are joining us after the fact, watching this as a replay. We're really grateful that you all are tuning in to listen to us talk about water quality today. We have some really exciting things to share. We are going to be talking a little bit about water quality here in Tennessee, talking about what we learned this last season for Tennessee Water Watch, and just, probably using the words water quality a lot during the next 45 minutes or so. Just to kick things off, I would love to just share with you all a little bit about Harpeth Conservancy. Hopefully you've heard of us before, but if you haven't, Harpeth Conservancy began in 1999, and our mission is to restore and protect clean water and healthy ecosystems for rivers in Tennessee. We use scientific expertise and our relationships to collaborate, develop, promote, and support broad community stewardship and action. Through our science, policy, and strong community engagement, we come together and we work to promote clean water and, those healthy ecosystems for rivers across the state. We started out in the Harpeth River watershed, and over the course of 25, 26 years now, we realized that our work had implications statewide through other watersheds and other rivers, and so we've slowly began working with other groups from West Tennessee to East Tennessee, and we're really excited that our vision for clean water and healthy rivers can be championed by all Tennesseans across the entire state.
Definitely.
One of the things that we are particularly proud about is our program called Tennessee Water Watch. It was launched live last year, thanks to Dr. Ryan Jackwood here. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about Tennessee Water Watch.
Yeah, thank you. So Tennessee Water Watch is our citizen science sampling program. We have volunteers that go out, collect water samples, bring them back to our lab, and we do some analysis, some lab analysis to figure out basically how much sediment is in the water and how much E. coli or bacteria is in the water. Jess mentioned that we launched it live last year. That's our platform that went live last year, but we've actually been doing citizen science water quality sampling. This was our 5th year that we finished.
That's amazing.
So we started, I think, a year after I got here, and it's been growing massively ever since.
Absolutely. Citizen scientists are a huge part of that work, and we would just want to take a minute to highlight some of those citizen scientists who've helped us throughout this last year collect samples. Can we just show those to you guys? Yeah. We have a whole group of these folks. Some of them are pictured here, some of them are not. But we want to just say a big thank you. I'm sure Ryan...
Absolutely. Huge, massive thank you to all these folks. And this isn't even everybody. I mean, over the course of the 5 years that we've been sampling, I mean, there are countless people, and I'm sure I would forget some names over the course of this program. And so huge thank you if you've ever collected a sample for us, if you've ever helped us out in the lab, if you've ever even expressed interest. We love that. And I guess just a little plug, we will be recruiting citizen scientists starting for next sampling season, which the sampling season will start in June, and we'll start probably recruiting for citizen scientists in March or April. So if you're at all interested, get a hold of one of us, get a hold of Harpeth Conservancy. So we're always recruiting.
Yeah, so he's mentioned the sampling season. One of the interesting things about that sampling season, I think we are clearly out of the sampling season now. It kind of runs concurrent with the recreation season, so it's the warmer months, right?
Yeah, we typically say like May to October, but if we have a lot of rain or it stays cold cold through the spring, it might be a little bit later. And then obviously kind of this year, I mean, it got kind of cold pretty quick.
Ooh,
so
yes.
Sometimes it extends into November, but not this year. So
definitely not this year. I'm pretty sure I don't want to go out and dip my toes in the water right now, but
certainly not.
It's usually about 20 weeks, right?
Yeah, that's usually about what we shoot for. But we kind of play it by ear. if it stays warm long through October, we'll keep sampling, and we will just want to make sure we've got kind of the recreation season covered, and especially when people would want to go out.
Yeah, that's great. So when these volunteer scientists go out and they're collecting samples, tell me about that process. Let's let everybody hear a little bit more about that process. So they're collecting a sample from the river, and then...
Yeah, so I'll kind of start from the beginning. So if you get interested at all, I send you a survey link, and you fill out the survey, and that's got everything from kind of like where you're located, where you would like to sample, and it kind of lists a bunch of our sampling locations that you feel like you might be able to drive to,
Yes.
and then drive to our office to drop it off in like a reasonable amount of time, usually in like the morning.
Okay.
So when you fill out that survey, we then go through and basically match volunteers to each of our sites, and our intent is that one volunteer handles a site, all the sampling for a single site for the entire 20 weeks. That's never the case. People go on vacation, people get sick,
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
usually we have some backup samplers that
Hey,
can kind of
I've
fill
been
in.
a backup sampler.
And so then, if you kind of get assigned a location, you'll come to our office, and we hook you up with kind of our sampling kit. It's got gloves, it's got clean, sterile bottles,
Yes.
it's got instructions. And then on sampling day, you would usually wake up kind of in the morning. Some people do it on their lunch break, and you drive to your location, and you are taking your bottle. Put your gloves on, you take your bottle, and you're finding a moving part of the the river where your location is. And we really try to pick public access spots.
Yes.
Where you
Definitely don't want people, trespassing or
certainly
getting
not.
on
Certainly
private
not.
property. Unless it's theirs, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Most of these locations have a parking lot, have stairs down to the river, and so
Excellent.
it's really not too bad. And then you're basically rinsing your bottle once with what we call the native water, which is just the river water, and then you're filling it up, labeling, what location you had, who sampled it, the date and time, driving it to our office, and then you can either drop it off and we will kind of handle the lab analysis, or if you're interested, like we invite volunteers and citizen scientists to participate in that. You can kind of learn how to do an E. coli test.
That it sounds pretty straightforward, but maybe we should back up a little bit, because I think, all of that would be great, but why are we even looking at the water quality to begin with? Why does it even matter? What do we want to learn about the water quality?
Yeah, so we're doing this for a couple reasons. One is just the general health of the water or the stream or river that we're talking about. So the more E. coli, the more kind of assumption that there are going to be indicator organisms, we'll call. And so E. coli is an indicator organism, and it indicates whether or not we think that other pathogens are going to be in the river. So salmonella, giardia, these types of things that actually make us sick.
Yes.
So we're worried about that from just a large standpoint. Hey, does this river have high E. coli? Does it not? And we actually submit those data to the state, and they actually get to use those E. coli data for their analysis as well. The other part of this is if E. coli is high one day, we want to be able to warn people. We want to be able to say, hey, if it's high, there's a chance you could get sick, and we want to be able to tell you where that is. So we collect a sample, and we do the analysis, and then we know what the E. coli value is there. And so we could then just tell people the result. Unfortunately, the way that the E. coli test works, it takes about 24 hours for us to get the result. So if you can imagine, if you want to go swim in a stream or a river on a Monday, and I'm collecting a sample on a Monday, I'm not going to know the result until Tuesday. That's not going to be very helpful for you.
Absolutely. So, your data is helping, fill the gaps where maybe state testing doesn't reach, and then it's indicating where there could be problems. So let's talk about that first, and then we'll kind of get into the actual breaking down of the testing here. But where can that contamination, or where can that actually come from? I mean, it seems like there could be a lot of potential sources.
Yeah, and I'm going to use the term non-point source pollution, and what that means is there's this huge diffuse area and pollutants that can ultimately get to the river. And so it could be coming from anywhere from greenways where people are walking their dogs and don't pick up after their dogs. E. coli is largely a warm-blooded gut bacteria, warm-blooded animal gut bacteria.
Yep.
And so Humans have E. coli in
Yeah,
their
we all
guts
have
and their
it.
ways. So do dogs, horses, cows, a lot of these
Yes.
animals. And so if you can imagine, where would you find waste from those things? It could be anywhere from farms that have a lot of manure. It could be anywhere from sewer overflows with human waste.
Yes.
It could be dog parks or dog waste, and it can even be wildlife. It could be where
Very
there's
true.
a huge concentration of deer or a huge concentration of fox or whatever. So it's coming from a lot of different places. Sometimes we see some obvious sources, sometimes we don't. And so
Yes.
it's tough.
Yeah. Well, I could imagine that, if we get a really heavy rain, that, there's, a lot of these places that, maybe dog parks or, places that have really manicured landscaping with a lot of fertilizer. All of that rain washes over it and then goes right into storm drains or even into the river directly. And then the E. coli after a really heavy rainstorm probably goes up.
Yeah, we've even seen some links with the amount of debris on streets. And I've seen some studies that kind of say if you do more street sweeping, you can maybe actually reduce the amount of E. coli getting to your streams or rivers. So
Interesting.
even kind of like some management like that is helpful for just water quality as a whole.
But you mentioned that the testing takes 24 hours. So no matter when we're testing, we're always looking backwards.
We're always behind. Yeah.
Yeah. So just as a hypothetical here, if we test on Monday, for example, we go out Monday morning, pick up a sample, and then Monday afternoon it rains really, really hard. And then Tuesday, I want to go to go swim in the same spot, and your test says there wasn't a lot of E. coli. Is that going to necessarily be accurate still?
Probably not. E. coli is incredibly volatile, and by that I mean some days it could be really low, and the next day it could be really high. And like the example you made, sometimes it's completely rain driven. So you get a big storm, and all of a sudden it's spiking up. So yeah, that I would probably be really nervous about that situation and reporting out numbers from the Monday sample that I took.
Yeah. Well, so Tennessee Water Watch kind of became an answer to problems like that. How did that come out?
Exactly. So we didn't want to have that 24-hour delay, and we wanted to try to factor in these rain events and to make sure that we're giving as accurate as information as we can. And so what we've actually done is we've created some predictive models. And these models use a lot of different factors, such as river flow, such as the amount of rain that in the last 24 hours. It could also consider solar radiation. Too much UV rays on some of these rivers actually kills some E. coli, and so that actually might be a benefit. We can use resources from the U.S. Geological Survey. They do a lot of real-time sampling, and same with the Weather Service. And so we can kind of collect that data in real time, and we can actually predict the amount of E. coli in that spot every hour.
Okay.
And so even at noon, if you wanted to go, we're making a prediction by, then as opposed to just 9 a.m. in the morning or from the previous day.
Interesting. So basically what you're kind of saying is that this data is all put into this model. It combines all of these environmental external data that goes with it.
Exactly.
And you are able to provide kind of like a weather forecast.
Almost exactly like a weather forecast, but with water quality.
With water quality.
And you think about weather forecasts, they're considering the moisture in the air and where the low pressure areas are and stuff like that. So they're collecting all of that data to make a prediction of whether it's going to rain or not. We're doing the same thing with whether how high the E. coli is going to be.
So folks are basically going to be able to as they look at the weather forecast, looks like it's going to be a nice sunny day. The temperature is going to be about approximately, today around 60 degrees. They could look at Tennessee Water Watch and say, okay, this spot on the Harpeth River, is predicted to be, in the green for E. coli.
Yeah, exactly.
So is this tool, it is a first of its kind in Tennessee. And how many sites we currently have live on this?
So live on our predictive tool, we have 8.
Okay.
We actually are sampling 17 different sites. And the discrepancy there is it takes us a couple years to get enough data to create the model.
Yes.
We have to have the data in order to, see when E. coli is high in order to create these models for the conditions when it's high. So fortunately, I think now we have enough data for like 5 or 6 more sites for next year. So where that 8 number is going to go way up.
So the more data you have, obviously, does that increase the accuracy of the predictions?
I'll say it, yes, but I also would say it might depend.
Okay.
If you have 100 data points over the course of the last 20 years and you make a model with it, that actually might be less accurate than having 100 data points or, maybe 80 data points over the last 2 years,
Okay.
because conditions change over time and development happens or, someone else moves into the area, their parking lot goes in or something like that. So, there are always changes in our watershed and that reflects the amount of water quality. And so we're always kind of trying to think, how can we make the models as accurate as possible?
Yeah. Interesting. So, one of the things that, folks have been, able to go on, they've been able to pull up, TennesseeWaterWatch.org and look at the tool. It is not live right now because our sampling season is over and you wouldn't be able to necessarily get an up-to-date prediction or...
Yeah, so right now we kind of have the tool, I'll say, like turned off. We could theoretically keep predicting through the winter, but we don't sample through the winter. And so that would not be like a comparison like apples to apples, like how our model would work. So we also figure that not very many people are actually recreating in like the winter months because it is cold.
Yeah, so, I don't know too many people apart from, maybe going on a polar plunge.
Yeah. And E. coli doesn't do so well in cold weather either, so we also don't think it's as big of an issue if you're thinking about January, but I'm kind of hoping that nobody is bathing in the river in January.
I mean, if you are bathing in the river in January, send us a message. Yeah. We really want to know about this. How is it feeling? Well, that's great. Tell us about this sampling season. I'm really interested to hear about the kind of the summary of your sample, what you kind of found overall, and then let's dig into it and see some of the results because here's a spoiler. I've actually already seen this and it's pretty incredible. Just the amount of work that went into this, and this guy did a great job. So give him a clap.
I would give at least as many kudos to the volunteers and to my Tennessee Water Watch coordinator, Eve Steigerwald.
Eve has been amazing.
She has been
this
incredible.
Year.
Yeah. So and those guys are the reason that we had our most successful sampling season this year. We collected 250 samples at 17 different locations.
Wow.
And that's every week. That is these guys being dedicated, giving their time, and it is
doing some quick math. 17 samples across 20 weeks. Let's see. I'm not very good at math.
You're going to try to do math live?
All right. Hush. So that looks like it's 340, or between 340 and 350 samples. Probably more than that because I know that we took some one-off samples.
Well, and we took some one-off samples and stuff. I think and we always, we lose some here and there. Whether,
Absolutely.
We also want to be safe with our volunteers too. So if we 100%. Get a big rainstorm on a Monday or something, secretly as a scientist, I would love that sample, but I also am not going to put anyone in danger. So sometimes we will...
you must go to the river and get the sample.
So sometimes we will cancel. Sometimes holidays will screw us up a little bit. So, but yeah, we had 250 samples this year, and we've had some and we also did some actually side kind of experiments. So I had, some interns and some, high school students that wanted to do projects. So the number of true samples that we did is higher than that. But for Tennessee Water Watch.
For Tennessee Water Watch.
Yeah.
250 samples, but probably, well over 300 for just the total.
Easy. Yeah. And we're still actually doing a little bit of these side projects at the moment.
So when we talk about samples, one of the things, we've already mentioned that, the citizen scientists bring in the water sample and then they're processed in our in-house lab. So when we process the sample, they end up going into a tray and they are put into an incubator overnight. For 24 hours, and they come out looking like this. And then we look at the sample underneath a black light, and you'll see these different wells will glow, or they'll be dark. And we have to actually individually count the numbers of the different wells that are glowing under the black light, and that helps us to count the number of E. coli present in the sample. I always find that really fun to do. It's not a great thing to see a really high number, but I like looking at the samples under the black light because it's...
And this test is specific to E. coli. And basically what that means is there's a little molecule within this powder pack that we mix into the sample. And this molecule has this little fluorescent, basically like molecule attached to it. And E. coli loves to eat this thing.
Yes.
And so E. coli eats part of it, and it releases this fluorescent molecule. And so once that's released, then it activates it, and it will start glowing under a black light. So if there's no E. coli there, that molecule stays attached, and there's no glowing. But if it's there, if E. coli is there, it eats it, and then now you see the glowing. And so that's why we know when our wells are glowing, there's at least some E. coli in there that's that is actually like eating some of these,
Well, and, I know that we said that E. coli is an indicator species. And for, everyone out there watching, an indicator species just indicates that there's something else going on within an ecosystem. Why test specifically for E. coli and not another?
Yeah, something that's like directly like if we were testing for cholera or salmonella or something, we could be like, hey, don't get in. It's definitely there.
That's definitely there. You don't want that.
The issue is that these specific tests like salmonella or cholera are A, much more expensive. B, they're much more specialized. So we would never be able to like actually do them ourselves. We just don't have the proper equipment or the space.
That makes sense.
And really, E. coli kind of encompasses everything, where if we were going to give a true picture, we'd almost have to sample for salmonella, cholera, giardia. You'd want to cover all of your bases. Yeah. So because theoretically, if you tested for salmonella and it was 0, like, okay, like, guys, there's no problem here, but maybe the giardia is high and we just didn't test for that. So E. coli is a very generalized kind of way to think about we're just doing a risk factor, really.
Yeah.
And so if E. coli is high, typically one or multiple of these other ones are also going to be elevated.
Interesting. And another thing that I know that we look at when the samples come in is the turbidity.
Yeah.
Why do we actually look at the turbidity first before we even test the sample for E. coli?
So turbidity is what I like to usually describe it as the cloudiness of the water. If you think about, if you've ever seen a river after it rains, sometimes it has that like chocolate milk. Yeah, I know, I always use that. But and so that's a lot of sediment in there, and that's a lot of organic material. And coincidentally, E. coli loves to be attached to sediment.
Absolutely.
So usually when there's more sediment in the water, we usually find more E. coli. We can actually graph it out basically, and it's like, almost, sediment goes up, E. coli goes up.
Positive correlation.
Yes. And so we do a turbidity because it's very, very quick. It's very cheap. We can get the result immediately. And it's just a really great water quality indicator. If you think about any water testing that kind of goes on, think about water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, anything like that, they almost always do turbidity as one of their like initial measures. And so I think it's a really good one to kind of check. It gives us kind of an idea of the amount of sediment, and then we can kind of equate that and kind of at least even do a little bit of research or kind of do some data analysis around, hey, how much turbidity do we see then a signature of E. coli? And there are actually turbidity meters in some of our locations that are giving. You can actually go online and look up the amount of turbidity in the river in real time.
And like at the USGS sites.
Yeah. And the U.S. Geological Survey actually has the capability of doing that at some of our flow stations.
That's pretty cool. Now on our Tennessee Water Watch map, when you click on, it's not live now, but for the future, when you do click on the little circle data points, you will see some information pop up in a little box, and it will have a link to those USGS sites, so you can click to get the data from there.
And you can still do that. It still pulls up all the information. It just has not available for the prediction. But you can see the last sample we took. You can see the result of the last sample we took, and
great.
You can see that USGS site too.
Perfect. So back to this year's samples. We want to look at a map that shows our sample sites.
Absolutely.
And we just want to talk about some of the key findings, some of the, the number of days sampled, what was like the percentage of, days that were above the threshold. Now, before we get to that though, let's explain for everyone watching what that threshold means and what it's kind of set at by the EPA.
Yeah, so we use an EPA standard, and there are other standards that can be used. Some states use their state-specific standard.
Yes.
Tennessee has one. It doesn't necessarily totally equate to like public health, but you could use the state standard for Tennessee as well. But what we use, there's a recreational water quality standard that is established by the EPA, and that is specific for what I'll call bathing waters. And so you can think about beaches, you can think about reservoirs, you can think about rivers, and so that's kind of there saying that, hey, this is the standard that we think if humans are swimming around or recreating in this area, we think that this is the standard. And that standard is 235 colony-forming units per 100 milliliters. So when we think about these things, you can think about 235. That's kind of the E. coli value that if it's below that, we would say, hey, it's, green, quote unquote, green or safe, or there is, according to the EPA, there is not much of a risk. If it is above that, basically the higher you go, the more the risk. So if you're at 236, probably not that big of a deal.
I mean, even up to like, probably we said like 500 is not
400 and stuff, but it's still a risk factor. So if you're a 20 something healthy individual, you may have no issues.
If you're
immunocompromised,
children,
exactly,
older adults,
those
the risks go up.
The risks go up, and so in our samples, just to give kind of a scale context, we see anything from incredibly low, like 5 E. coli per 100 milliliters. So that's like virtually there's almost none in there.
And then for people at home, 0 is what the standard is for drinking water.
Yes, they are. Yeah, when you're at a water treatment plant, they basically expect you to have 0 E. coli coming out of that thing. Because that's going to your tap water, and so obviously that is very highly regulated and highly treated.
We want that regulated.
So in environmental systems, we only see at least some E. coli.
Yes,
like we talked about wildlife. Of course, wildlife is going to be there whether or not there's So 235 is our standard, and then we will see, we'll see plenty of samples below that. We will see plenty of samples that are above that. Yes. And then we've even seen some samples that, get up to almost 9,000, to give you kind of a context of like how high it can get in some areas.
I know that from my experience in looking at this data, I know that there are some sites that I've regularly seen at about 5 to 6 times the EPA threshold. Yep. And they regularly stay around that. So it's pretty interesting. But let's take a look at this map.
So this map we're looking at here, it is giving you the percentage of, we say days because we only sample once per day, but really it's the percentage of samples that we collect that are above that 235 threshold. Now, on our actual map on Tennessee Water Watch, we have several different kind of, we'll say, quote unquote, thresholds. But we have, if you're below 235, it's green. If you're above 235, it's yellow. And then if you're above 350, it's orange, I believe, if my memory serves. And then if you're above 750, it is red. And so we at least give a little bit more context to this kind of risk factor. If it's red, then, we're up close to 1,000 almost. And that's 2, 3, almost 4 times the EPA standard. And so we want to make sure that people are clear on that versus if we were, showing red for a 236 sample, that wouldn't necessarily be as informative or as clear about that.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at kind of our map here, you can see the percentage of samples that are above that 235 threshold. And so it's, if you know anything maybe about runoff and water quality a little bit, our highest, the times that occurs most often are kind of our urban streams.
Yes.
So Richland Creek that kind of flows down through Belmead and eventually flows into the Cumberland. Browns Creek is another one that kind of flows past like the fairgrounds and Geodis Stadium, flows into the Cumberland. That's actually our highest location. We see the most days. Very, very frequently we see elevated levels of E. coli in Browns Creek. And then it's kind of a mixed bag with the rest of them. Mill Creek is probably the next. It's a little bit high, but it's still an urban stream.
Yeah.
Flows through like Antioch area. The Harpeth is usually pretty good, but it's also not, immune to rain events and to, runoff and stuff coming from either urban areas in the Franklin area or even, rural areas, because the Harpeth kind of flows through some of these areas that might have more livestock, and so it might have there might be different sources in the Harpeth than say our urban streams.
I would imagine that there are distinctly different sources for some of these areas. You look at Richland Creek. Part of Richland Creek runs beside major highways. are major roadways. Same thing with like if you're going through Mill Creek right along 24. But when you're looking at the Harpeth, there's a lot of farms and rural land out that way.
I do want to mention, too, that not pictured on here, we've actually been doing the Cumberland River. It's tough to squeeze it into this map. But the Cumberland River is actually only 24% of the times has E. coli that's above 235. You know, typically people assume that the Cumberland River is terrible.
Yeah.
Now, I can't speak for the other aspects of water quality, but for E. coli specifically, we don't see it super high in the Cumberland on a regular basis.
Now, do you think that could be, I mean, there are some reasons that could be, like maybe the volume of water? Or...
Yeah, the Cumberland is so huge that E. coli may get diluted to a degree in the Cumberland River, so when we sample it, it might not seem like the concentrations are as high. That could be a result. It could also be something like, the Cumberland has a huge watershed, so... it might, if Nashville is just right there, and if that's a source of E. coli, maybe it's, contributing some, but there's tons of probably clean water coming from other places. So some of these little urban streams don't have a huge watershed, and their whole watershed is probably urban area.
I mean, when you look at the volume of water and just the amount of water flowing through Richland Creek versus the Cumberland, it's distinctly, very little versus a whole lot.
Massive. I also wanted to mention, and kind of not pictured here, but we're also doing the Stones River.
Okay.
That's east of Nashville, kind of going like kind of Murfreesboro area-ish. And then we do the Duck River as well. And the Duck River has been, a lot in the news recently, but we wanted to make sure we're doing the Duck River. We're doing that in Centerville. And those two are probably kind of on the list of like maybe getting models for next year, or those three, I guess, Cumberland Stones and the Duck River. And so we're seeing pretty good results from all of those. And so it is kind of, it's exciting. It really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to, point out a couple of things and ask a few questions following up with some of this. I mean, this model is obviously intended to help paddlers and swimmers and families make informed decisions before heading to the water. And, we want to point out that, when, the E. coli level is particularly high at maybe one of the sites, that it might not necessarily be high at another site. But if they see E. coli even in like the yellow or the orange, is that a, you shouldn't touch the water, you shouldn't get in the water kind of warning for folks? I mean, what would you tell folks?
We would never say unequivocally don't go in the water.
100%.
These are completely based, this whole system is basically risk factor. The higher the E. coli, the more risk you have. If that risk is satisfying to you, or if that's, if you don't think that's an issue, then of course you can make that decision for yourself. We just want to make sure that people have more information, or as much information as available for them to make that decision for themselves. There are certainly ways that you can kind of ameliorate, like the risk of that. You can be washing your hands, take hand sanitizer. If you're bringing a pet, maybe bring bottled water instead of letting them drink out of the river. That kind of stuff is you can certainly do those things as well.
If you have a little dog and the dog goes, jumping and splashing in the water, even when their fur is wet and they're licking their fur, that could absolutely potentially make them sick. I know that, I wouldn't want my dog to become sick, but understanding, the safety around it, I think is really important. And we don't want people to look at the information and say, oh, I can't ever get in the river because there might be E. coli. That's,
exactly.
That's not something we want. We want people to enjoy the rivers. They're amazing features that we have here in Tennessee. I mean, I read a statistic that over 90% of Tennesseans live within a mile of a river or stream. And, the fact that we have that natural landscape is just so special.
I know.
Having come from living in the desert for, almost 20 years, I love the fact that I can go to streams and rivers and green space all the time now.
I will also mention kind of on the models, because we always got to talk about accuracy with these things. So our models as they stand are probably, depending on which model, because we've got 8 of them. Those are 8 different ones for each of those 8 locations, but probably between 75 to 85% accurate. So, we're also not batting 1,000%. But, if you're thinking about it, like weather forecast, very similar to a weather forecast. So, if they're calling for rain, maybe they even put a percentage on there. But maybe it won't rain. And
I
so
100%,
you kind of
yeah.
have to treat our forecasting system a little bit similarly. Like it might be a green day, but really their E. coli could be a little bit higher because we only have that 75 to 85% accurate. Now, granted, most of the time we are correct, but there's always that one-off time. But we are always trying to improve these models and make them more and more and more accurate. And they're never going to be 100%, but if we can get them as close to 100% as possible, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I think, using this as a tool, not a rule,
yeah, there you go.
is the right way to look at it. We actually have a really cool magnet. I'm going to see if our wonderful producer Josh, who is sitting behind the scenes, you guys can't see him, will pull that magnet up for us. It's before you splash and play, check the forecast or check the, I can't remember the exact words now, I just lost it.
The water.
Check the water for the day. You'd think I would remember that?
I mean, you wrote it.
So, we would encourage you all to definitely, as the recreation season comes up, before you splash and play, check the water for the day, TennesseeWaterWatch.org. But what's next? Tell us about the next steps for Tennessee Water Watch. I mean, we are, 6 months out to the next sampling season, roughly. We're going to start planning. We're going to start talking about things. We will be having a before the sampling season and Tennessee Water Watch season kicks off, we will be having a webinar. So, if you guys want to join us, you can come and sign up to learn more about water quality, learn about the unique things that we have here in Tennessee in our rivers, and how you can be, even involved in, the whole process of helping us, protect this.
Absolutely. So we've been expanding pretty steadily, year after year. And so I think that that's still kind of the goal is expansion. And that expansion could be, adding a couple sites here in Middle Tennessee. If anyone out there has some suggestions for public access sites where people like to go swimming and recreating. And
we're going to be adding a site with Ashland City Marina. We're excited about that.
Yeah, so those types of things we're always looking for. Obviously we need a volunteer that's willing to go to that location, so we can't necessarily choose somewhere in Memphis. But, so sticking around the Middle Tennessee area.
If they want to drive from Memphis to Brentwood once a week.
It's a big ask. So we're looking at kind of additional sites that would be kind of strategic, obviously.
Absolutely.
But areas where people value and people want this information for whether that's their neighborhood or whether it's a popular, kayak put in or something in the region.
Of course.
Next, we always want to be improving our models. I mentioned that earlier. And so, we collected a bunch of samples this year. And so we will incorporate all of those into the existing models and to try to improve that accuracy. And so that's partly of what's going to be going on. I also secretly, and I don't know if I listed it on the slide, but I think that exploring different options for models may be really cool, especially from an artificial intelligence standpoint.
We've talked about that.
There are some really cool kind of nonlinear or AI models out there that can be used to actually make these predictions. Now, I have no idea if they're going to be more accurate than our current kind of more classical models, but I think that's absolutely something that we need to explore. And so that's going to be something that I'm going to be really interested to do. And then finally, and I, again, would love feedback from anyone out there, but we have our online tool, the TNWaterWatch.org, and that it contains a map that you can obviously scroll around and click that you mentioned earlier. I'd love to know what other features we could include on that. Do people want to see the amount of flow in the river at each location? Obviously, we've got those URLs that you can go to, but do they want it just listed there on the map? Do we want to color code it differently? Do we want to add weather, overlays so you can see where if a rain cloud's popping? So there's a lot of fun things that we could do. Think about, when you go to your weather map, or think about when you go to, some of the mapping, systems or mapping apps that you use, what features do they have and what would be kind of fun to add to ours? And so
100%.
Yeah, I'm always looking for suggestions. I always think that, that's a, make it as user-friendly as possible, really.
That sounds great. So, if you folks want to get involved, obviously, staying tuned for the next season, becoming a water sampler, a citizen scientist water sampler, getting involved through joining our webinar. You can pitch a site to us, help us sponsor a site. follow us along on our social media channels at Harpeth River. We are always posting new educational series, talking about different things. We love to share our data, share our stories, and talk about, the work that we're doing. You can, keep up with all of our work and all of our programming throughout the year there. We actually have a cleanup coming up this Saturday at Richland Creek. When we do these cleanups, it's not just about picking up litter. It's about talking about the water quality. Everything that we are able to remove from the sides, the bank of the riparian zone is something that we keep out of going into the river.
Absolutely.
And that is a way that we can help this water quality get better. So our producer Josh here will be out there on Saturday. Marie will be out there on Saturday, and they would love to see you. You can find the link to sign up on our website, also on our social media channels. They're all posted there, so please go sign up and join us. We'd love to see you. There are going to be more opportunities to volunteer in December and January, and you can even come join us for legislative session. We'd love to see you for that. But thank you all for joining us today. We'd love to hear some feedbacks. This is our first live. We hope to do more, and we want to remind you that before you splash and play, check the water for the day. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Transition. And yeah, we're good.
Oh my God.
Should I
We only made it 40 minutes.
just end?